The TrackGBV data dashboard highlights how the perpetuation of gender bias and discrimination that leads to violence is not just confined to the domestic sphere or specific communities, but pervades each and every institution, including those charged with upholding justice. However, by using evidence, we can help shift the mindset necessary to foster greater equity and accountability. Now, it's one thing to have an isolated example of a case with its own unique circumstances, and it's another to build an evidence base of over 20 years of case law that tracks the patterns and impact of biased judicial decision-making. This dashboard is based on case law analysis of over 4,600 gender-based violence sentencing decisions from the magistrate courts, High Court, Supreme Court, and the Court of Appeals from 2000 to 2021 across the Pacific Island countries. For each of these cases across an array of different charges, the reviewers gathered the information for over 40 plus variables. Out of these, the cases that were applicable to our methodology were included here. This dashboard was built with advocates in mind to help them in their efforts towards building greater transparency, consistency, and accountability in judiciaries. In the top right corner of the dashboard, there is an information button that describes the interactive features of the dashboard and how to use them. Next to it is the download button. If you want to download the entire dashboard, certain tabs, or specific visualizations. We've organized this dashboard into 7 different tabs, and we are currently on the first tab, the Overview tab. There are 3 filters for you to be able to interact with the dashboard: country, time period, and the type of violence. There are currently 7 countries from the Pacific in this dashboard, and you can select any one of them. For the time period, we've broken down the analysis for over 20 years into smaller time periods to reflect the impact of major legislative changes. For example, for Fiji, we have 2000 to 2009, which includes cases prior to the adoption of the Domestic Violence Act, Crimes Act, and Criminal Procedures Act, 2010 to 2014, which was after those came into effect, and 2015 to 2021, which marks ICAD's engagement in training stakeholders on this case law analysis methodology. Information about major GBV legislations in each of these countries and their corresponding time periods can be found if one hovers over the time period section. The type of violence filter allows you to filter cases by type of violence: domestic violence, sexual violence, or both. In our analysis, if the perpetrator of sexual violence is a family member, it is tagged as both DV and SP. We also have a map here with each of the countries in the dashboard. Hovering over the country will tell you the total number of cases for that country and the breakup by type of violence. Scrolling down, we have numbers related to the reliance on contentious factors during sentencing in gender-based violence cases for the selected country. Contentious factors are those factors that, when raised by defense or judicial officer, can discriminate against the victim survivor based on her gender and also impact the outcome of the case. In our analysis, we make a distinction between the cases where these factors were raised during sentencing and cases where they were used as mitigating factors, thereby justifying a reduction in sentence. We've separated these contentious factors into 3 categories: gender stereotypes, customary practices, and other contentious factors. There could be a combination of factors that are raised in a case. We have the breakdown of all these cases where contentious factors were raised during sentencing, whether singularly or in combination with other factors. By hovering over the bubble, you can see some of the case names where these factors were raised. The visualization below puts things into perspective. Each female here is representative of every time bias was used against her during the judicial process. Selecting one of the bubbles above will filter the visualization to the relevant cases. Now we have the regional comparisons on the next tab, the regional data tab. The first visualization here compares the percentage of cases where contentious factors were raised, which is in bars, to how frequently these factors led to a reduction in sentence, which are the circles. The next visualization breaks down those factors that were used in mitigation by type. This shows what type of contentious factors are most commonly used in a particular country. For example, Samoa and Vanuatu have high reliance on customary practices, while Fiji often uses gender stereotypes in mitigation. Then we have the average final sentence in rape or related cases across countries for decision with and without contentious factors used in mitigation. The next two visualizations are like judicial performance cards. Each of the variables in these two visualizations have been color-coded into three categories: high, medium, or low, based on regional averages. A low score here is by no means the benchmark, since the regional averages in itself is exceptionally high for a lot of these variables. And the last visualization on this tab compares the age group in which most of the victim survivors in our dataset fall. We can see here that girls between 6 and 17 years of age are the most vulnerable across all countries. Moving on to the next tab, the Survivor Stats tab. This is where we will see some of the important variables that play a huge role in gender-based violence cases: victim-survivor age, relationship of the perpetrator with the survivor, and victim-survivor anonymity. A number of gender-based violence cases concerning girls coming before the court could be influenced by factors like greater reporting, less societal pressure, or prosecutors taking these cases more seriously. It could also mean significant underreporting of violence against women. Next, we saw that in over 60% of the cases across countries, the perpetrator was known to the victim survivor, and non-partner violence was over 50% in Kiribati and Solomon Islands. Non-partner violence numbers are not available in most of the recent population-level surveys. Anonymity goes directly to the safety of survivors and is important for those who may otherwise hesitate to use the courts. Even in cases where victim is not referred to by name but is otherwise identifiable due to a relationship with the accused or other factual information provided, anonymity has not been maintained and be recorded as such. The next tab, the Judges Stats tab, talks about the role of the judicial officer during sentencing. Judicial officers, like the rest of the population, are not immune to the societal biases surrounding them. Education and training about the harm caused by contentious factors like gender stereotypes are crucial to building capacity and raising awareness within the judiciary. These examples of informed and biased statements from judicial officers illustrate what contentious factors look like in different cases. Next, we have specific type of contentious factors raised and by whom, and the breakdown of these factors by the type of courts they're most likely to be raised in. Here you can highlight different types of contentious factors or select specific bars to see the sum of cases where a specific factor was at least one of the biases raised. Further down, we have the first-time offender numbers. Our case law analysis shows that some judges do not adhere to the spirit of the law when granting leniency to perpetrators based on first-time offender status. This generally garners a larger sentence reduction. Then we can see the percentage of cases where medical reports were not cited during sentencing. Medical reports are important as they go directly to preserving evidence of the severity of a crime and are essential in documenting prior incidences of violence. Lastly, we can see sole breadwinner argument. This perpetuates unfairness and inconsistency in sentencing and reinforces gender stereotypes. The next tab, the Sentencing Stats tab, shows the impact of these contentious factors on sentencing. Survivors face numerous hurdles at every step of the judicial process, and we see the impact of those barriers as well as biased judicial decision-making, resulting in disproportionately low sentences and sometimes no sentence at all. Here, we have the breakdown of decision impacting contentious factors. Hovering over the bars, selecting the buttons on the right, or selecting a group of bars will provide you more information. Next is the average final sentence by charge category after considering all the mitigating factors and partial or total sentence suspensions. We compare the sentences for cases where contentious factors impacted sentencing versus the ones where contentious factors were not used as mitigating factors. We also look more closely at custodial sentences, sentence suspensions, and what kind of contentious factors are most likely to lead to a partial or total complete sentence suspension. Now, the next tab is all about the methodology that we follow while analyzing these cases and the things we take care of while collecting data. We also have the source of our data, the PACLI site listed here, along with the data highlighted by various prevalence studies. At the bottom, we have our previously published TrackGBV reports with links to each one of them. And last but not the least, we have a page dedicated to our trusted partners, without whom this project and this dashboard would not have been possible. In the future, we will continue to update this dashboard as and when we pull new cases from the PACLI website and our pro bono partners analyze them.